There is no free will. Those are the first words I had ever read. I woke up to them every morning for many, many years. They were written on a sign. The sign was hung above the opposite row of bunks on the sleeping barn. I have no memories from before the farm. I just assumed I was born there. None of the other children knew why they were here or where they came from. Nobody knew how long we had been at the farm either. Some children aged, and some didn't. I couldn't remember much, but that's what happens when you're not given much to remember. I do remember always being deliriously hungry. We would be fed 3 small meals a day, but before every one, Headmaster Raynon would make us watch him sprinkle a few drops of clear liquid from a labelless brown bottle on the food. He would serve us behind a steel door and slide each meal through the window, so you never knew if your meal was poisoned or not. Most of us danced around the edges of their food. Nobody was eager to dive in, not when we had seen a dozen kids turn blue and die right in front of us after picking the wrong meal. Several of us rarely ate the food, and I never ate from my plate. I would scavenge what little clean scraps there were in the garbage. I ate 4 crows. They are just as disgusting as the saying implies. And I would go full Rainfield and eat flies, ants, dandelions, cockroaches, clovers, pillbugs, anything. Anything that was living and somewhat edible. I would keep the spiders, though. I had a special place for those. The 20 boys and 30-odd girls worked the fields that provided the food to the farm. Crumbling wood compound fenced by tall barbed wire and surrounding woods. Past that, there was wilderness. Even though there weren't spotlights or guards, the farm was much more inescapable than any prison. Every few weeks, Headmaster Raynon would take the near 100 of us to the edge of his farm, where he would blow a strange brass whistle. Bloodshot German shepherds sprang from under a bush as if they had been waiting for his call, their mouths foaming and bloodshot eyes threatening to break through and chew us alive as the headmaster coldly smiled and spoke with a voice that sounded like gunshots fired far away.
They are old guard dogs gone rabid. I have learned through one of you how to train them so they only obey me, and if you run, they will kill you or make you wish you had stayed with me.
Very few people came to the farm. The rare delivery truck, a prison bus, and a black-tinted Thunderbird that made a powerful turbine roar as if rocket engines were installed under the hood. And they only dealt with the headmaster, the only person to leave with the driver of the Thunderbird. There was a rumor that we were not real kids at all, that Headmaster Raynon was a demon who crafted us all from blood and ash. We never dared speak to the headmaster, and would never ask a question as ludicrous as that, or we would feel the touch from his hard, cruel hand that made the surrounding air a pincushion of pain, and would sting your skin as his hand grazed your face. But above the poisonings, back-breaking labor and cleaning, scavenging for food, and never knowing a single day of what was going on, we feared the nights worst of all. Being exhausted from working in the fields all day wasn't enough to overcome the fear to sleep. When it was darkest and the air had fallen still, we would hear the headmaster's creaking footsteps just appear in the center of the drafty barn without any kind of warning. Sometimes we would hear him walk on the roof, up the walls, on the ceiling. I can still hear his breathing if I close my eyes, that sick pig's wheezing, as agonizing breath that sucked air in and out in a guttural exhaust. The breathing and the footsteps would circle and circle until he heard someone cry. That's when the taken child would give one last cry before he was gone, along with the headmaster. The missing child would return to their beds in the morning, bearing new marks. The glancing finger left a nasty red and purple smear on one side, Sometimes dark fingertips dotted their bodies. We would never say anything about these marks to anyone. We were always afraid the headmaster would hear and give us more marks and bruises. Sometimes he would touch you with his entire palm, leaving a wrinkled imprint as raw and painful as a hot iron brand. I had a few marks as well, but I considered myself lucky that I only had a few, well, as far as I could tell. I was one of 4 boys and 5 girls who cleaned the headmaster's home, the farmhouse. I cleaned the bathrooms and emptied the garbages. One time, while cleaning the bathroom, I was standing on the windowsill and noticed a few loose ceiling boards right above it. I began thinking. This was my life for what felt like many years. I swore I could have named 25 separate times the frost came. But we had no way of keeping track of time, not even by our ages. I swore sometimes we would see a kid go looking from, about 13 to 14, back down to half that. Time made no sense at the farm. I knew I wasn't going to get out by waiting. When I woke one morning to find a searing red-hot handprint of the headmaster Raynon on my upper arm, a heavy starvation-induced plan emerged from the fog that was my brain. I went to the special place by the cisterns where I had kept every black widow spider I had come across. I kept them behind a false brick on the side of the farmhouse, where I had once collected 8 of them, and discovered that the black widows were cannibalistic when grouped together. Only the strongest survive. I kept hosting tournaments until 108 black widow spiders were reduced to 26 of the most toxic, twitchy, and bite-crazy widows you would ever want to meet. It was horrifying and exciting. I was bitten only once and came very close to an agonizing death. I knew one bite wouldn't do a monster like Raynon justice. I was set. I was ready to enact the last stage of my plan when everything changed on a cold day in early December. A helicopter, as black as the Thunderbird, made a couple of passes over the farm. Raynon went insane. He poisoned half of the meals the day after the helicopter came, and after breakfast, he took us all outside to form a queue outside of the chicken slaughterhouse. When he began leading us in one by one, a few joined me and ran. Judging from the screams, he caught most of the runners, but he didn't catch me. I spent many nights, many years fantasizing about this moment, when I wasn't listening to his footsteps or sick breathing. I put the black widows inside of an old chocolate box scavenged out of a woodpile, perfect for keeping each one locked away. I went up through the floorboards and hid in the space near the bathroom. The headmaster may not sleep through this paranoia, but everyone's gotta go to the bathroom eventually, even monsters. My plan was set. It was dark by the time he arrived with his candle. The sound of him pulling down his trousers and his simultaneous grunt masked the sound of me moving the planks above him and pulling off the lid of the box of 26 nightmares, showering the headmaster with 26 ravenous, crazed gladiators that were my black widows. My beauties began biting the headmaster as soon as they landed. The terror of the child farm, the demon named Raynon, lied curled around his toilet, eyes swelling shut, a mouth locked in disgust. Surprised, outrageous gurgles of horror and spasms racked his whole body. Before his eyes swelled completely shut, he saw my small 7-year-old face peering down the hole through the darkness. The missing child. The headmaster then began to cackle.
I knew this could happen. There is no free will, it's fine. I lived 10,000 years already. I lived your happy summers, wonderful marriages, fruitful successes. Your life was beautiful beyond compare. That's why
He smashed a few spiders scuttling round his face, and he was fading fast.
You and I are ghosts now,
were his last intelligible words before his breathing stopped. I hid for hours before carefully making my way to the window, the safest place in the room. The spiders were done and gone. Thank you. Thank you, my black widows. The chopper returned with a convoy of armed men right before sunrise. Unfortunately, I was the only survivor of the farm. The captain of the operation was a man named Clinton Moxley, chief field investigator for the Hematical Office. He adopted me, and I took his last name. He was the one who named me Howard. I told my father what little I knew. He corrected me on a few names. The headmaster's name wasn't Raynon. He was a man named Clark P. Gain, an anomalous individual. The office he worked tracked the headmaster down here. My father was the one in the Thunderbird all along. He told me about the time that the office had captured the headmaster for study within one of their field labs. The subject grabbed Frank's wrist, one of the team's eldest members. They saw Frank's 79-year-old face twist and contort until his wrinkles disappeared, and the flesh lifted up from his face. In a few seconds of agony, Frank was a middle-aged man again. My father said that he personally stopped the other agents from interacting with the creature, as they were gathering film evidence of their unique phenomenon associated with Clark P. Gaines. Frank was known to be a formidable fighter, but was helpless to the touch of Gaines. Every time Gaines's hand would land on Frank's bare flesh, Frank would scream, turning more pubescent every second. Clark only let go when Frank was a child again, squirming in old man's clothes. He chooses victims who had good lives, my father would explain as he tucked me in. His existence is the greatest evidence that time is a physical dimension, something that exists and has always existed. He lives your years in just a few seconds. Frank was left with 9 bad years out of 79. You would think that being young again would be great. Remember that he was left with the mind of a 9-year-old without care of friends or family. You know that pain well, Howard. You know. The office didn't have the resources to care for Frank. We believe Clark Gaines is responsible for over 100,000 homeless children across the world. Frank was just one of them, another human that was used up in the timeline. I asked the only father I knew, why me? Why had he chosen to adopt me? He brought me to the master's bathroom's dual mirrors and told me to take off my shirt. Because I owe you, son. You were an old man once. You were my mentor, my partner within the office. You went into the farm by yourself to try to shut it down. I hoped you would remember anything about your past, but I see the headmaster got to you too. He looked behind me, using the set of mirrors to see my own back for the first time, and seeing it covered in handprints. That was many years ago. True to the headmaster's words, I had been a ghost among the living since then. It's been hard sleeping, especially now. For the past few nights, I have heard the headmaster's footsteps and raspy breathing in my bed. My father never said they found the headmaster's body. I know he wants his farm back. He wants me back. And he wants all of his children back. Hi, 207. It's Miss Viola Swamp. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Go check out my Facebook page and leave suggestions for stories you want to hear. I hope to see you in class next time.